When we change the way we see, the things we see also change. Catherine McCormack. Catherine McCormack's words struck me deeply, both as an art historian and as an artist. Her book, Women in the Picture, What Culture Does with Female Bodies, was eye-opening in the way it peeled back the frames that have shaped how women are represented and, more importantly, how they are perceived. It gave language and clarity to questions I had long carried within me about the history of looking. This is why I want to review the book here, not only for its powerful critique, but also because it stood at the forefront of my own series, The Gaze Reclaimed, which honors the women artists who, against all odds, painted or sculptured themselves and their subjects back into visibility. I also have something new I want to share with you all. I've invested time and resources into building Brushstrokes of Being Studio. By the end of November, the full program will launch. For now, mini courses on color theory for artists are available. The school will offer structured, step-by-step learning experience, including art history, cultural philosophy, storytelling on canvas, finding your why, how to be an artist entrepreneur, portrait sketching, portrait drawing, portrait painting, and much, much more. It has become my mission, a possible antidote to unhappiness in this world. And suppose you're ready to begin your journey. In that case, you can join the waiting list for the full launch or explore the mini courses on color theory for artists, history of color and pigments, that's free by the way, temperature, harmony, family palettes, skin colors, etc. etc. To start developing your skills today. The links will be in the show notes. So, welcome to this episode of Brushstrokes of Being. And let's look into women in the picture. Catherine McCormack is an art historian who wrote Women in the Picture, a timely and incisive exploration of how female bodies have been constructed, framed, and consumed within the history of Western visual culture. The book intervenes in a long tradition of art historical and feminist critique, standing in the lineage of John Berger's Ways of Seeing, 1972, and Laura Mulvey's seminal writings on the male gaze, while offering a distinctly 21st century reassessment of how these cultural frameworks continue to operate in both high art and popular media. McCormack organizes her study around 4 recurring archetypes: the Venus, the Mother, Maidens Dead Damsels, and Monstrous Women. Each category encapsulates a cluster of visual strategies and cultural expectations that recur from the Renaissance to the digital age. The Venus, for instance, captures the persistence of the idealized female nude as an object of desire. At the same time, the Mother reveals how women's bodies are instrumentalized in narratives of reproduction, purity, and sacrifice. The Maidens Dead Damsels exposes the recurrent cultural anxieties projected onto female figures who transgress, whether the Medusa or classical myth or the femme fatale of cinema. Ultimately, the Monstrous Women situates women within the technological and consumerist framework of the contemporary world, where the female body is fragmented, commodified, and endlessly reproduced. What is striking in McCormack's analysis is her insistence on continuity. How Renaissance allegories, 19th century salon painting and Hollywood cinema all participate in remarkably stable visual regimes. She demonstrates how these frames, far from being relics or of the past, remain active in the production of images today, whether in advertising, celebrity culture, or social media. The supposed liberation of the female subject in the digital era is shown to be, in many cases, a reinscription of older patriarchal paradigms under new technological conditions. I want to briefly go into one of the most celebrated images of feminine beauty in Western art, Vermeer's Girl with a Pearl Earring. Yet, the very terms of its acclaim reveal the structures McCormack critiques. The girl's gaze, forever described as enigmatic or seductive, is not her own. It is imposed. She is painted to allure, to draw the viewer into complicity with Vermeer's own desire. To call this a masterpiece is to celebrate an act of framing that turns a young woman into a cipher of male fantasy. Furthermore, the technical fetishization of the painting is itself worth interrogating. The so-called perfection of Vermeer's later works derives in part from the use of the camera obscura, photomechanism tracing that his painter contemporaries were well aware of. Earlier works, painted without this device, lacked the hyper-polished surface that the girl with a pearl earring exemplifies. A huge Vermeer lover and an artist himself noted in the documentary Close to Vermeer that when he examined earlier paintings by Vermeer, he didn't understand them. To him, they are from a beginner, not very talented and all over the place. Suddenly, there are small paintings of scenes that are highly complex and ingenious. He asks himself why Vermeer put so much time and, what he claims, skill into such small paintings. I would say that the mechanical process exaggerated the effects of light and form, producing an illusion of mastery that was less a matter of hand and more a matter of optical apparatus. When audiences today drool over the girl's gaze, they reenact the very problem McCormack identifies. The female subject is not allowed agency, but is positioned to perform desire for others. Rather than celebrating it as a universal masterpiece, we might instead see it as a prime example of how patriarchal and technological frames conspire to manufacture seduction. McCormack's style is both scholarly and accessible. While firmly grounded in art history knowledge, she writes with clarity and urgency, making her arguments available to a wide readership. She deftly interweaves case studies from Titian to contemporary film, without lapsing into jargon or over-theorization. At the same time, her account does not shy away from the political stakes of representation. To read Women in the Picture is to be reminded that images are never innocent. They shape and discipline ways of seeing, and by extension, ways of being. And I quote from her chapter, Maidens Dead Damsels, page 186 in the paperback. Society tolerates sexually explicit images of women as long as they conform to an ideal that doesn't relate to women's autonomous erotic pleasure. The book's greatest strength lies in its capacity to make visible what has been normalized. By naming and dissecting these archetypal frames, McCormack not only exposes the structures of looking that underpin our visual culture, but also calls for the possibility of alternative ways of seeing. The work aligns with a broader feminist project, not only critiquing dominant images, but also reimagining how women might appear as subjects, not merely as objects in art and media. Women in the picture should be considered essential reading for scholars and students of art history, visual culture, media studies, and feminist theory. It will also appeal to a broader audience concerned with cultural politics and the ethics of representation. McCormack has produced a work that is both accessible and rigorous, personal and theoretical, historical and urgently contemporary. Catherine McCormack's book is a lucid, compelling and essential reminder that the images we inherit are not neutral reflections of reality, but active participants in the construction of power, gender and desire. To look at women in pictures after reading this book is to see differently, to recognize both the weight of art history and the possibility of transformation. So I highly recommend reading this book, everyone. It is available as a paperback, a Kindle edition, and it is on Audible.